Mexico strikes back against U.S. tariffs. Nearly 3 million cars are exported from Mexico to the U.S. every year, meaning that for every 3 cars you see in Texas, one likely started its journey in Puebla. But the most surprising part isn't the number. It's how Mexico, under newly elected President Claudia Sheinbaum, reacted without losing its temper. The clash begins when tariffs become a tool of diplomacy. In early March, the U.S. president, as usual, raised the tariff sword with a threat: a 25% tax on goods imported from Mexico. Among them, auto parts, a product U.S. factories heavily rely on to keep production lines from grinding to a halt. This isn't the first time the U.S. has used tariffs as a negotiation tactic, but this moment was different. Mexico had just elected a new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, a climate scientist, former mayor of Mexico City, and now the head of the world's 4th largest car-exporting nation. Responding with calm, not cursing, President Sheinbaum didn't go on TV to throw slogans or lash out. Instead, she organized a large-scale rally at Zócalo Square, the heart of the capital, not to protest, but to show national unity. The message from the event: Mexico does not accept being dictated to, but will prioritize dialogue. Meanwhile, in Canada, the public reacted far more aggressively to a similar tariff strike. It was this calmness that made the U.S. president postpone the tariff plan until April 2nd, a move that quietly signaled a level of respect for his Mexican counterpart, something that previous Canadian prime ministers didn't quite get. Not just talk, Mexico plays chess. Behind the scenes, offstage, Sheinbaum's team didn't sit idle. Mexico's foreign ministry immediately shifted gears, signaling readiness to respond if the tariffs were enacted. But here's the clever part. They worked directly with American lobbying groups, from car manufacturers to agricultural associations in states like Texas and California, states that not only grow avocados, but also grow votes. The message was clear. If tariffs are imposed, it's American farmers and workers who will pay the price. Car manufacturers in Detroit, heavily dependent on parts from Mexico, feared their production engines might soon stall. Soft weapons, energy migration, and timing. Mexico didn't stop at trade. They used strategic leverage in energy and migration too. Energy. The U.S. oil refining system, especially in the Gulf Coast, depends on crude oil from Mexico. Migration. In February alone, Mexico deployed over 10,000 troops to control its borders, significantly reducing the number of illegal crossings, a key point Washington repeatedly highlights in negotiations. While the U.S. still grapples with fentanyl smuggling, Mexico proactively worked on enforcement, but maintained a humanitarian image, not surrendering, but also avoiding open confrontation. A final warning: no attack, but a plan. When the U.S. postponed the tariff implementation, Mexico didn't see it as a victory, but as a necessary pause for negotiations. Still, Sheinbaum left nothing to chance. The Mexican government announced that if no clear decision was made by April 2nd, on April 3rd a series of countermeasures would be unveiled. Among them, retaliatory tariffs targeting U.S. agricultural goods, stricter oversight of companies with unclear trade practices, and most importantly, reopening negotiations on USMCA, the North American Trilateral Trade Agreement. A 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff Trump imposes. Car tariffs. American cars soar in price. Car prices are skyrocketing. A $48,000 car could now jump to $60,000. While American consumers face the pain of rising prices, workers are left jobless. And meanwhile, China is laughing behind the scenes. Ford F-150, the American car symbol, is no longer true. Let's start with the Ford F-150, one of the best-selling cars and a symbol of American cars. But did you know even this vehicle is not completely made in the U.S.? Although the Ford F-150 is assembled in the U.S., it contains up to 30,000 parts produced in more than 24 different countries. For example, alternators from Mexico, wheels from South Korea, drive shafts from Canada. These parts are all subject to 25% tariffs due to Trump's policies. With key components coming from abroad, this tariff will cause unexpected consequences for U.S. automakers. Car price increase, significant cost rise. Automakers in the U.S. are now facing higher tariffs, leading to increased car production costs. Just the import tariffs on parts from Canada and Mexico could raise the price of a vehicle by around $3,000 per car. Additionally, Tariffs on parts imported from other countries, such as wheels from South Korea, will cause the price to rise by another $3,000 to $6,000. On top of that, tariffs on steel and aluminum, essential materials, will add an additional $400 to $600. As a result, a car priced at $48,000 could increase to $60,000, which will definitely force consumers to pay higher prices for every car they purchase. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs. Will tariffs bring factories back to the U.S.? Trump's goal is to force automakers to move production back to the U.S., creating more jobs for Americans. However, the reality is quite different. Instead of creating jobs for workers, companies may choose to automate production to reduce costs. Shifting entire production to the U.S. is not an easy task. One study shows that if automakers want to move the entire supply chain back to the U.S., it could take years and cost billions of dollars. Not to mention the risks of lower quality and delayed production timelines. The U.S. auto industry is in turmoil. The U.S. automotive industry had built a strong supply chain system based on cooperation and free trade with countries like Mexico and Canada. However, with the new tariff policies, Trump has disrupted this foundation, causing chaos in production and logistics. These changes not only disrupt the supply chain, but also increase production costs, putting automakers under significant pressure regarding pricing. Instead of focusing on advancing technology and producing new cars, automakers now have to focus on debating whether to import parts from Mexico or Canada, or if they can find alternative domestic sources. These debates prevent them from concentrating on innovation, which is essential to maintaining global competitiveness. China outpaces, the fast win over the slow. While the U.S. is struggling with its tariff policies, China has quickly developed and is now becoming the world's largest car exporter. This has made industry experts reconsider America's strategy. An automotive expert once said, "It's not the strong swallowing the weak, but the fast beating the slow." And right now, America is falling behind. China has begun to dominate the global car market, while the U.S. is still caught in debates over tariffs and chaos in the supply chain. Will the U.S. maintain its leadership in the automotive industry, or will it be overtaken by competitors like China? Shock at emergency press conference. Did the spokesperson of the 47th president lose control? In just 4 minutes of press briefing, the White House's chief spokesperson left the public drowning in contradictions. And perhaps what caused the most confusion was the silence in moments when answers were needed. Media crisis, when a question cannot be answered. In a press conference filled with controversy, Caroline Leavitt, chief spokesperson for the 47th president, was asked an extremely simple question. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tear up and tax. So then why did he have to tell the domestic automakers not to raise prices? Well, that was a private conversation that was had. I'm not sure if that comment was made or was not made. But as for a core question about policy, dodged with a vague, dataless, irresponsible statement. Failure to address classified leak. Immediately after, Leavitt caused further shock when asked about the leak of military plans via a messaging platform. Her response: "The case is closed, and the president continues to have confidence in his national security advisor." How the White House handles national security risks, with just 3 words. Meanwhile, the American people, especially veterans and military families, are demanding clarity. Who allowed the leak to happen? What has been done to prevent it next time? Still silence. Baseless economic claims. Next, a reporter asked, "Do you ever hear from any retired Americans who are stressed about these wild swings in the stock market because of the tariff uncertainty, and they're sitting there on fixed income or living off a 401k? Are legitimate concerns, and the president takes those concerns very seriously, and he's addressing them every single day." Instead of offering a concrete plan, Leavitt repeated the same old script. Look at what President Trump did for you in his first term. He is working on implementing that economic formula every single day. But lower income and current GDP is contracting by negative 3.8%, according to the Atlanta Federal Reserve, compared to a plus 3.9% projection just 8 weeks ago. This shift is alarming. Diverting from economic failures. When asked if the president is okay with rising prices on foreign cars, Leavitt turned again to criticize the previous administration. And once more, the justification: we're saving taxpayers' money. That's ultimately going to drive down inflation. We're unleashing the might of our energy industry, which will bring down prices as well. To the heart of your question, because this is very important to the American. And the truth is, tariffs raise prices. Even Fox News, once a strong ally, had to advise Levitt. We got to do a 100% buy-in over this bumpy period. Just communicate. A deportation that shocked the nation. A Maryland father, legally protected from deportation with no criminal record, was sent to El Salvador. Now he's detained in a prison for gang members. The question, why did the White House ignore the judge's ruling? Levitt answered, who does that judge work for? He's an immigration. It was an immigration judge who works for the Department of Justice at the direction of the Attorney General of the United States, whose name is Pam Bondi, who is committed to eradicate inconsistent and misleading statements. After being confronted that the deported man had never been convicted in the U.S., Levitt insisted, who is committed to eradicating MS-13 from our nation's interior. They raped and strangled a 20-year-old autistic woman to death in Maryland. Even J.D. Vance, a devoted supporter, mistakenly claimed the judge's decision happened under the Biden administration. The truth, the court ruling protecting this man occurred in 2019 under Trump. The contradictions are too clear. The trust is simply gone. Don't blink if you don't want to miss what happens next. Canada strikes back with $43 billion. Is Tesla forced to flee? $43 billion US dollars, a number that cannot be ignored. That is the value of the retaliation Canada has just launched, aimed directly at the United States. And Tesla is the very first victim. Why did the U.S. trigger new tariffs, restructuring, or breaking supply chains? The 47th President of the United States has officially imposed a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles not produced domestically. This policy is presented as a measure to accelerate the recovery of the domestic auto manufacturing industry. But at the same time, it has triggered significant global tremors. In 2024, the U.S. imported nearly 8 million vehicles, equivalent to over $240 billion in trade. Half of the cars sold in the domestic market came from outside countries. The immediate consequence is clear. Dependence on international supply chains also directly affects American companies themselves. Many analysts have warned that this tariff will increase costs, reduce profits, raise car prices, and slow down consumption. But the White House claims this is a necessary action to end reliance on supply chains stretching from Canada and Mexico to Asia. Market reaction: some fall, others gain. Just hours after the announcement, GM stock dropped nearly 8%, Ford lost 3%, and Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep and Chrysler, fell over 4%. But Tesla and Rivian, two U.S.-based electric car makers, saw modest gains. Many investors believe this new policy unintentionally clears the path for Tesla by eliminating rivals that can't overcome the tariff barrier. But is the reality that simple? Canada strikes back. A $43 billion trade war declaration. Canada didn't wait long to respond. Prime Minister Mark Carney declared, "The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over." What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear? Among those targeted, Tesla was the first to be blacklisted. Tesla's incentives frozen, a harsh blow from the north. The Canadian Ministry of Transport froze $43 million worth of electric vehicle incentives for Tesla. The reason given: Tesla had submitted a flood of rebate claims just before the program ended, raising concerns about the legitimacy of the transactions. Statistics showed that Tesla's filings during this period equated to the sale of 2 vehicles every minute, 24 hours a day. This unusual volume forced the Canadian government to step in and investigate. And it didn't stop there. The Canadian government is now considering excluding Tesla from all future incentive programs, while also imposing new tariffs on imported Tesla vehicles, similar to what the U.S. is doing with European and Asian cars. Tesla's global crisis is growing. Tesla isn't just under pressure in Canada. In China, its second-largest market, sales are plummeting. In Europe, competition is intensifying as brands like Volkswagen, Renault, and Stellantis launch low-cost EV lines. But Tesla's biggest current rival is BYD, the Chinese EV manufacturer. In the third quarter of 2024, BYD surpassed Tesla to become the world's top-selling EV brand. In the fourth quarter, it extended its lead even further. BYD now operates in over 50 countries, from Asia to Latin America, the Middle East to Africa. Meanwhile, Tesla remains focused on the US and select European markets, with no presence in Africa and very limited presence in Latin America. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Don't take your eyes off the screen if you don't want to miss what comes next. Jon Stewart and Josh Johnson mock Trump's erratic tariff policies. Do these decisions actually make the US economy stronger, or are they simply creating disruption and uncertainty? We'll take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to make our country so strong and so rich, it will never be so rich. Tariffs, it's a beautiful word, isn't it? Donald Trump once claimed that tariffs were a way to knock down other countries and bring billions of dollars into the US economy. He said it would be a weapon to make America stronger and help people get richer. But right after Trump imposed tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico, the reality didn't meet expectations. Stock markets crashed sharply, and people began feeling the negative impacts. Unemployment numbers soared, and consumer spending dropped. Then the word recession, a term everyone fears, began appearing on financial news outlets. Will these tariff policies truly bring long-term benefits to us, or are we facing a future of uncertainty? So tariffs are on, they're delayed, they're off. Who knows if they'll come back, or when, or for how long? Trump shocked everyone with his constant changes to tariff policies, like flipping a switch. At first, he imposed tariffs on goods from major trade partners like Canada and Mexico, claiming it was the only way to make America strong again. But just when the market collapsed, everything started to change. Trump unexpectedly paused tariffs, leaving everyone confused. So, can the government continue changing policies without understanding the long-term impacts? How can businesses make strategic decisions when these policies feel like a game without clear rules? The reality is this instability only makes the US economy more unstable, and that's the biggest worry the people are facing. Point is, these tariffs are necessary. I've been talking to President Trump, and I can speak exactly to his intentions on tariffs. I mean, come on, y'all heard Donald Trump. He said during the campaign, "We're doing this. It's an economic street fight, so you better get on board because the pain is worth it to bring back manufacturing, even if it leads to higher prices. We are not backing down." Okay, but the American people don't like higher prices. Then forget the whole thing. Tariffs off. All right, I don't even know who suggested it. Josh Johnson used a humorous approach to criticize the contradictions and instability in Donald Trump's tariff policies. The reality is, these policies change erratically, with no clear strategy. When Trump and his team make decisions, previous statements are quickly reversed when faced with challenges or reactions from other countries. This not only makes it difficult for the public and businesses to predict the future, but also increases confusion and uncertainty. These constant changes leave investors unsure of the long-term plan, and consumers grow more worried as they can't determine the true value of money in the future. This inconsistency is costing the US economy dearly. Trump did. He said they're necessary to bring back America's economy, and they are, which is why they're back on. So we are doing tariffs. Damn right we are. I ain't scared of, not even more expensive housing. Tariffs are off. But okay, but that will increase the trade deficit. On again. But what about the price of breakfast? Off in the morning, on at night. At first, the Republican Party promised that tariffs would make the US economy stronger. But as the markets were affected, they started changing their tone, saying there would be a little pain, but it should be accepted to achieve long-term benefits. But is the cost that the people have to pay, from food prices, fuel costs, to imported goods, really worth it? Jon Stewart sarcastically said, "Prices are rising. Oh, it's not inflation, it's just everything's getting more expensive." This inconsistency is costing the US economy dearly. Trump did. He said they're necessary to bring back America's economy, and they are, which is why they're back on. So we are doing tariffs. Damn right we are. I ain't scared of, not even more expensive housing. Tariffs are off. But okay, but that will increase the trade deficit. On again. But what about the price of breakfast? Off in the morning, on at night. At first, the Republican Party promised that tariffs would make the US economy stronger. But as the markets were affected, they started changing their tone, saying there would be a little pain, but it should be accepted to achieve long-term benefits. But is the cost that the people have to pay, from food prices, fuel costs, to imported goods, really worth it? Jon Stewart sarcastically said, "Prices are rising." "Oh, it's not inflation, it's just everything's getting more expensive."